Hi, Dustin.
Hey, Charlotte, how you doing today?
Doing well, sir. How are you?
I'm excellent. It's great to be speaking with you.
For sure.
I'll introduce you to my co-host, Ton.
Hey there, how you doing?
Hi, Tom.
It's ton, like 2,000 pounds.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's all right.
Hey,
It's all right.
Ton.
I always got to clarify that. Dusty can't speak very well. So
Sorry about that.
We'll work it out. Anyways, we're really glad to have you on the line. If you're ready to go, we'll get started.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, all right. So we've got to talk about this. So you are Ric Flair's daughter.
I am.
This is like, so
I'm
to
his
everyone
youngest
else,
daughter.
this is like the most ridiculous. Like, how? Oh my God! I wish I could do that. Talk to us about what that really was like, if you can.
Oh, what? I think everyone wants to know, like, was he Ric Flair at home? Like the person that you see on TV. I mean, my dad has always been larger than life, but it is and just such a good dad. He was always like my school mascot growing up. Like, I went to a really small private school in Charlotte up until high school. He was always around. I brought Macho Man to show and tell one time when I was in kindergarten. No, I mean, I think it was normal just because I didn't grow up in a big city. I mean, everyone was familiar with my dad. Charlotte was really small. And not until I got to college did I really realize, how famous my dad was. Not that I was sheltered by any means, because my parents were pretty liberal with me growing up, but I just didn't realize he was so well known. And I didn't take into the fact that, wow, my dad, means so much to so many people, or is so famous. So, for instance, I went on my first European tour with my dad right before college, and even overseas. I don't know. It's hard. It's a hard answer. I don't know, because he's dad. He's not Ric Flair. He's just dad to me. So when I look at him, I'm like, or when he's trying to embarrass me, I'm like, Dad, just shut up. Like, stop.
Yeah.
Like, can you just stop wooing? No, I mean, he's just dad.
That's awesome. So then talk to us. You've come a long way in wrestling here. When did you first realize that was something you wanted to pursue, and did your dad have something to do with that?
Actually, it wasn't my dad. It's the same story. I was at the Four Horsemen Hall of Fame. I think that was 2012, and I had already graduated from college. I was just personal training in Charlotte, and it was the first year that my whole family didn't go, so it was just me, my little brother, and my dad. And the Hall of Fame was over, and my little brother had, wanted to be a professional wrestler his whole life, and he'd been trying to get into, at the time it was called FCW in Tampa, and he's like, why don't we do this together? You're not doing anything. Well, I mean, I was just personal training, but he's like, just give it a go. Like, you're so talented athletically. We could go together. And then I just remember, the whole speech from my dad, this is something that you never wanted to do, but if you, give it a shot, please just make sure that you put your whole heart into it. And that was in April. And then in July, I reported to FCW, and 3 years later, here I am.
Yeah, it is definitely
quite
incredible.
The journey.
Yeah, wanting to just be a personal trainer, and then all of a sudden you are in NXT, and eventually the women's champion. That's quite a feat in just a few years.
Yeah, and I, especially with the whole I don't know how familiar you are with NXT, but just the group of women too. At the time I came in, I just really feel like it all happened for a reason. Me, Bayley, Sasha, and Becky, and they had already had so much prior experience, and it was the first time that I think so many indie girls were being hired versus just models. So, training with them, and then the company hiring Sarah Del Rey, I think it was just a perfect storm. And I think that has a lot to do with, my progress in the last 3 years.
Yeah, I have to say, I will fully admit that I pretty much, I'm a big fan from when I was a child, and now I rarely watch any main roster anything. NXT is amazing. You were amazing on it. That whole women's movement was exactly what I think is needed. So was that like a conscious effort for you guys, or did it just naturally happen?
No, really, it's what I said. So when I showed up in developmental, Paige was there. Me and Sasha Banks came in together. There were a couple other girls there that aren't with the company anymore, but they had prior indie experience, and they're still on the indies. And then Bailey came in. And you had all these girls, and then Becky. You had all these girls working together, and then me, no experience, always wanting to get better and just loving the business. And then when NXT had its first special, you saw Paige and Emma, right? Then Paige debuted on the main roster. Then I had my match with Natty. So then me and Natty were like, well, we want to top Paige and Emma. Then you had me and Bailey. Me and Bailey were like, we want to top Charlotte and Natty. You just have this group of women that won't settle for just being divas. Like, we wanted the men, or we call them the boys, to take us as main event talent. And we weren't going to stop, working our butts off to get to that point. And then me and Sasha main evented the first NXT traveling show in Philadelphia. I think it was Philly. No, was it Philly? Or was it before WrestleMania? San Jose. I'm not sure. There's been so many monumental moments. I don't know. It just keeps getting bigger and better, and hopefully the movement, is somewhat starting to take off on the main roster. Obviously, you can't change it overnight, but NXT, that was 3 years of us, grinding, and then up here or on the main roster, it's not going to happen just overnight. I think it's going to take a couple years, but there's a group of women with the company now that are willing to, wait to make that happen.
Yeah, it is incredible. And, like Ton was saying, there are some people who just watch NXT, and obviously a lot of people before that, it was, seen as a developmental or kind of minor leagues. Now it's selling out.
No, it's definitely its own brand, especially with NXT London. Just to watch it and know that, we started out in Stark or Okeechobee or Fort Pierce with 30 people, and then they had 11,000 in London just in 3 years. It really did give me goosebumps, because it's just crazy to think how far Triple H has taken the brand.
So then, when you are called up to Raw, is it kind of bittersweet that you have to leave behind NXT, but you're also mentioning you're excited to see where it goes in the next couple of years? So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it was bittersweet for me, just because, obviously not having any kind of wrestling background, I'm the only superstar that's NXT homegrown. Does that make so? Everything I learned about the business, because everyone's like, oh, your dad's Ric Flair, you must know everything. I had no idea. Other than my dad being Ric Flair and, the 16-time world heavyweight champion, I didn't know anything about the business, how it worked, about the psychology, the little culture that we have that's so special. So it was bittersweet, just because I found who I was as a talent at NXT, but what you work for every single day is to get to that main roster, and you work to be able to be a part of WrestleMania, SummerSlam, TLC, Hell in a Cell. So it definitely was bittersweet, but I know this is exactly where I want to be, and that's on the main roster, changing the game. So
yeah, that's awesome. So I gotta say, I also notice like your in-ring performance is really, it's awesome for women's wrestling. It's amazing. And you talk about just coming right out of NXT, being kind of homegrown there and not really knowing a lot about the business beforehand. So did you work a lot? Like, was your father a part of your training, or did you watch a lot of tape? I ask this because I noticed little things that you do. Some of the knee drops, the wiping the feet on the apron, like what mannerisms, that kind of come from like little things that are throwbacks to your dad. How integrated is that, and do you enjoy that?
So this is going to blow your mind. The wiping the feet, the hitting the rope, the little mannerisms, whether I realize that or not, that just can't. I just, with my process, because I had no wrestling experience, the only thing that really was something that we worked on was they were teaching me the figure four because I asked. And I was like, how could I make this my own? So I bridged and called it the figure eight. But other than that, and then, my dad's signature face plant, the flop, where he lands on his face, those two things were the only thing that we really worked on to say, other than and wooing, to be like my dad. All those other mannerisms, whether I realize it or not, I guess just watching him so much as a kid, that it's kind of like, you have mannerisms like your mom or your dad. Maybe I just have them. Like if you see us in person, we have somewhat of the same mannerisms sitting, like eating dinner. But I don't know. It just happens. It wasn't like, oh, I want this move set, but like the knees, like a lot of people do the knees. It's just, they say, oh, well, that's her dad, but it's because I pull down the knee pad.
That's pretty awesome. And it makes sense because it comes off super natural, which is great. It makes it wonderful to watch.
Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you so much. No, yeah, I mean, a lot of what helped me wasn't even being in the ring, because I've had so much athletic, I do have a lot of athletic ability from all the sports, but watching tape over and over and over and watching matches and understanding the psychology and what made these people larger than life was really the biggest part of my growing experience. And I did watch a lot of my dad, watched a lot of Shawn Michaels, watched a lot of Triple H, Kurt Angle, Dean Malenko, Arn Anderson. So I stuck to like those wrestlers, even though it's funny because I'm so much bigger than the girls. I mean, I'm not like a beast, but I am visibly bigger and really athletic. You would think that I would probably watch more like Sting, like bigger guys, but I just don't, just because those guys were so technically sound and told such great stories. Ricky Steamboat, even though I don't really wrestle like Steamboat. I'd say Becky Lynch, with her arm drags, is more like Steamboat. But it's only because at NXT, I was a heel the whole time versus a babyface.
Sure.
So you wrestle a little bit different. That might be too deep. Does that make sense?
No, totally does. And of course, you're the Divas champ now, and you have, Becky Lynch and Sasha and all these girls coming up to the main roster. So where do you see, I guess, women's wrestling going? Do you see it maybe main eventing cards on Raw or some pay-per-views down the road?
Oh, 100%. Well, Paige and I closed out Raw. You get lost the track of days, but like a couple weeks ago, and that was huge. No, but I definitely see the girls having an opportunity to have a match on Raw, or even, a semi-main event. Because usually there's two main events on a pay-per-view, maybe being the semi-main event, and then one day maybe main eventing. I definitely see that. Just because, look at Ronda Rousey, and I hate to compare us to, different sports, but it's kind of the year of women. Serena Williams, the women's soccer team, Ronda being basically the face of UFC. I think people just wanted a change for the women as well in wrestling, and there happened, to be that group of women that wanted to take on that challenge. So I do see that for the future, and especially with people, we have Bayley's going to debut, I'm sure, soon. And then if you look at the crop of girls at NXT that are all going to be up here, can you imagine what it's going to look like in 3 years?
Yeah, definitely, and it's great to see where it is now, and hopefully someday, it'll be more. I don't want to say more legitimate, but you know what I mean.
No, I absolutely. Yeah. Well, you know what? We'll have a bigger division, and I think that's what was lacking for so long.
Sure.
Like we'll actually have 10 or 12 girls instead of just the few that they rotate.
Well, we have Raw at Target Center in Minneapolis, and it's the Slammy Awards, and I see that you're up for a few of them. I assume it's going to be a clean sweep for you at the Slammys.
Well, I hope I have your vote. Actually, I don't even know what I'm up for, so I'll have to look.
So are these maybe not as prestigious as we're led to believe then?
No, I try not to, to be honest, I try not to look or pay attention to, like, if it happens kind of thing.
Sure.
You know, we're on social media so much. I'm like, oh, I think I'm up for a Slammy. Am I not? Am I? I don't. I'm sure once I get to TV that on Monday, and they'll be like, okay, you're up for these Slammys. I'll be like, oh, I hope I win. Because I am that competitive, but no.
So, will you be wrestling this Monday? Do you have any idea?
That I won't know. I'm not. I hope so. I do have my first Muscle and Fitness Search cover coming out on Monday, though.
Oh, excellent. So that'll be...
yeah.
Maybe they'll have one of those big covers drop down from the ceiling like they have in the past.
That would be amazing.
That would be awesome.
This one isn't Playboy. This is Muscle and Fitness.
Oh, sure. We got to ask you, we usually ask if we have any wrestlers on the show, if they could wrestle anyone from the past, who would it be?
Ooh.
It's a tough one.
It changes every time.
Or maybe a handful if you can't narrow it down to just the one.
Well, Lita's been working with us recently, so as of today, I would love to have wrestled Lita.
There you go.
I could see her maybe coming back. Maybe that match would actually happen someday.
I ask her all the time. She doesn't give me an answer.
Well, thanks a lot again, Charlotte. It's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Oh, thanks, guys. Are you guys coming on Monday?
Absolutely.
Well, I hope I'll be wrestling.
I hope so, too.
Well, have a wonderful day. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you, Charlotte. Bye-bye.